Welcome back. I'm Dr. Cheek and I'm a licensed clinical psychologist. And today we're going to talk a little bit about gentle parenting. Now, I know for some of us, we've heard a lot about gentle parenting. We may not have looked a lot into gentle parenting, but have you ever wondered where did gentle parenting come from? And is it a true parenting style? And if so, is it more in line with authoritative parenting style? Is it more in line with permissive or uninvolved? And that's going to be what we're going to be talking about today, which is what is gentle parenting? And I won't bury the lead here. For me, gentle parenting more aligns with permissive parenting. And I'm going to explain why. Now, there are a lot of reasons why I feel like it does. But first, I want to talk a little bit about all of the parenting styles. There are 4 major parenting styles. There were originally 3, then an additional one was added. Now, the main 3 that were originally studied were first the authoritarian style. Now, the authoritarian style is more what you may consider the rigid ruler. So this is the parent that is the do as I say, not as I do. Children are to be seen and not heard. If I say jump, you say how high, and you do it because I said so. There's no explanation for what I'm telling you to do. You just do it because I'm the parent. That's the authoritarian style. And that style is typically characterized by parents who may have the ability to be warned, but in most cases they're detached. They have high standards or high expectations for their children. They primarily lean on punishment as a way to shape behaviors. They have high expectations, but the expectations themselves are not always verbalized to children, and there is some expectation that children should inherently know what their expectations or their standards are, but they will get punished if they don't meet those particular standards that they may not be aware of. But this type of parenting style is also characterized by strict rules that are again managed through punishment. So that's authoritarian. Now we also have authoritative. Now authoritative is what we might consider the gold standard for parenting. Now authoritative parents are typically what you might want to consider the tender teacher. These are the parents who would explain to you the reasoning for the consequences for your actions. They see their children as not so much primarily extensions of themselves, but individuals who have a voice and their voice can be heard. These are the parents that take a watch me and learn approach. Now, authoritative parents have characteristics such as being warm, being responsive, being nurturing, having high standards for their children, but they're also able to provide the reasoning for those standards. They set rules, there are expectations, there are consequences for not meeting those expectations or breaking the rules. They are verbalized to the children, so the children are very clear about what the consequences to rule breaking or not meeting expectations are. Authoritative parents are also seen as like the primary or the ultimate decision maker. And the one thing that authoritarian and authoritative parenting styles have in common is the root word for the most part is authority. So with these 2 parenting styles, the parents are seen as the authority figures in the home and most of the time outside of the home as well. For authoritarian, it's more strict, it's more parents by themselves, children have no input. With authoritative, can be seen as a give and take. The parents makes the ultimate decision, but they do hear their children out. They do want to hear what their children have to say as it relates to getting the children's own needs met. But final decisions are made by parents. Now, we have permissive parenting. Now, permissive parenting is what we may sometimes consider maybe laissez-faire or less demanding or structured parenting. Permissive parenting can be more along the lines of, I will be your confidant, this is a partnership, we're doing this together, me as a parent, you as a child, but this is still a partnership in this growth process for you as my child and for me as a parent. And permissive parenting also has this approach that I want to see the best for you, and I want you to have an openness to express yourself and who you are as a person. Now, permissive parenting is typically characterized by not having a lot of high standards or high expectations. They have low standards or expectations for their children. They are warm and nurturing parents. They care about their children and they truly care about the emotional well-being of their children. Permissive parents are attentive parents. However, the children primarily are the ones that dictate the things that may or may not happen in the household. And the decisions that are made are inclusive of the children. So there are times that children may make the final decision. There are times that parents may make the final decisions. In a permissive household, that is flexible. In a permissive household, there are rules, there are limits that are set, and and there are consequences, but they don't use discipline. They don't use punishment as frequently. That's something that's rarely used. They also foster open communication with their children. So it's the idea that I want you to come to me as not just your parent, but your confidant, your companion in this growing process. And to some extent, they have a strong desire to not see that their kids feel any level of rejection or failure in any way. So that's permissive parenting. And I think we sometimes get permissive parenting confused or misconstrued with uninvolved parenting or neglectful parenting. And that's the last parenting style. That was the parenting style that was added last. Now, that parenting style is typically characterized by the parent who, maybe by choice or by force, is not able to be attentively in their child's lives. The children are pretty much allowed to have freedom, allowed to do or go and come as they please, because the parents are typically uninvolved or neglectful of the children's needs. I should say neglectful to the children's wants. These types of parents make sure that the basic needs of their children are met. So shelter, food, clothing, those basic needs are met. But warmth, comfort, those nurturing aspects that you may find in other types of parents are not necessarily there for uninvolved or neglectful parents. So this type of parenting style has few opportunities for nurturing and have low or no expectations of their children's behaviors or performance or achievements. Now, because these parenting styles have been studied, there are outcomes that they've shown to be relatively common for children with specific parenting styles. So for children of authoritarian parents or strict parents, they find that those children are typically very obedient and well behaved. However, they may suffer with higher levels of anxiety or depression. They may struggle with making decisions for themselves or feeling confident enough to make decisions for themselves. They may suffer with low self-esteem. They may lack the ability to be autonomous or to do things on their own, or feel like they have the ability to do things on their own. That's the outcome for children of authoritarian parents. Now, for those children of authoritative parents, this is the nurturing, the teacher, the reasoning person, the listener. Now, the outcome for these types of children are they tend to have higher self-esteem. They tend to do well in social settings. They have greater social skills. They have the ability to regulate themselves. They have the ability to regulate their emotions. They have the ability to talk things out when things get difficult. They know how to handle adversity. That's children of authoritative parents. Now, children of permissive parents tend to have high self-esteem as well. Some of them also do well in social settings and social skills. However, children also struggle with social skills. They may be demanding. They may feel sometimes entitled. They may struggle with dealing with authority figures. They have low motivation for achievement. They tend to have problems with self-regulation. They tend to have problems with emotional regulation. They tend to be impulsive in social situations or social settings. Now, the outcome for uninvolved parenting is a higher level of anxiety and depression. They tend to do worse in school. They tend to struggle with social engagements or struggle with social relationships. They tend to have poor emotional regulation. They tend to have lower self-esteem, and they tend to struggle in peer relationships. Those are the outcomes for the children of these primary parenting styles. And this is why I say gentle parenting is aligned with permissive parenting. I know the creator of gentle parenting, who is Sarah Ockwell-Smith, she considers it close to authoritative parenting. However, it's more in line with permissive parenting than authoritative parenting. And the reason why is because some of the things, and if you go on her website, she has a PDF that outlines how her gentle parenting style is different from Western standards of parenting. And I picked out at least 4 of them that kind of goes in line with the permissive parenting, and all of the other guidance that's provided for gentle parenting kind of falls in line with the 4 that I'm kind of highlighting. Now, one of her guidelines is that gentle parenting follows the natural rhythm that's observed in their child, and they follow that natural rhythm as far as maybe behaving or how they're wanting to engage that day, or like daily activities or responsibilities. Also, she highlights there is no such thing as bad behaviors, and she notes that those things that we consider bad behaviors, in her estimation, is just unwanted needs not being met. So it's not truly bad behavior, it's just the child is responding to a parent not addressing a need. Now, another thing that she highlights is that gentle parenting involves parents' behavioral expectations of the children are lowered based on those brain developmental standards and age. And lastly, she talks about not necessarily setting rules and not necessarily setting consequence for those rules. She talks about setting boundaries and limits. First things first, we do not set boundaries for other people. I think she meant expectations or maybe rules in that sense, but boundaries aren't meant to be set for someone else. Boundaries are things that we set for ourselves that kind of dictates what we feel is acceptable or needed in a relationship or in our interpersonal relationships. Those things that we feel like we need to feel safe and secure in a relationship. Now, those aren't things that people tend to set for us. Those are things that we typically set for ourselves. So when she talks about setting boundaries as a part of the gentle parenting, I'm going to assume that she meant setting expectations and limitation. And that was the only thing that she highlighted that kind of makes her gentle parenting different from permissive parenting. However, permissive parenting also set limitations and guidelines, but they rarely utilize discipline. And in her particular protocol, she does set limits and she does set boundaries or expectations, and the consequences for those boundary violations or limitation violations was noted to be both consistent and flexible, which I guess in some cases you can be consistently flexible and that may be helpful, but when we're dealing with children, because they are behavioral creatures, consistency is key. And children learn more from behaviors than words in most cases when they're younger because they don't have the language processing or language vocabulary built already to understand the words sometimes, so they rely a lot on behaviors to get their needs met. So consistency is necessary, especially when we're talking about structure and discipline. Now, being consistently flexible for some children can be confusing. So in understanding these well-studied parenting styles and understanding this particular individual's idea of what gentle parenting is more aligned with permissive parenting, and that is more focused on giving the child space to kind of dictate what life is going to be like in the household. And the daily standards is a collaborative process with the child and the parent. We are trying to make sure that the child doesn't feel any level of rejection, so we don't call any behaviors bad behaviors. There are expectations, but they're lowered to meet the standards that we feel are necessary for the child. And like permissive parenting, there are low expectations, there are fewer expectations. So it is more in line with permissive parenting because in this particular dynamic, the parent doesn't have like the final say. It's always going to be an open dialogue. It's always going to be a collaborative process with the child and the parent, with the child sometimes being able to take hierarchy in certain situations where maybe the parent should set the guidelines and the rules. In authoritative households, the parent is the ultimate and final decision maker. There are higher standards that are expected of the children, and there are consequences for inappropriate or poor behavior. All of those things are a part of authoritative parenting that just are not present in gentle parenting. Does that make gentle parenting horrible? No. Gentle parenting, just like permissive parenting, has the ability to be warm and nurturing, and it provides a loving space for a child to grow up in. They tend to have higher self-esteem, but they struggle with behaviors. And what I would like to know and actually understand from Sarah Ockwell-Smith is that she's in some ways done a longitudinal case study on her children. And I'd like to know, what are the outcomes of her children? Are they more in line with permissive children outcomes, or are they more in line with authoritative children outcomes? That may be how we start to look at what gentle parenting is aligned with. For myself and from my understanding of parenting styles, gentle parenting is permissive parenting. And I know that's hard to hear because when we hear permissive, we automatically assume uninvolved or neglectful. And that's just not what permissive parenting is. So what I hope you take from this video today is that there are 4 primary parenting styles that have been studied over and over again. And those are authoritarian, which is the strict one; authoritative, which is the guided, nurturing one; there's permissive, which is the warm, nurturing one; and then there's the uninvolved or the neglectful parenting style. All of these parenting styles have been studied. The outcomes for each of these parenting styles for the children have been studied. Gentle parenting, as outlined by the creator of gentle parenting, is more in line with permissive parenting than any other parenting style. And I do encourage you to go and read her blog that kind of outlines her reasoning for creating this parenting style, and just so you can understand the thought process of why gentle parenting was started and what it truly aligns with. Now, as always, please feel free to jot down any thoughts, questions, or comments you have below. I hope you've learned something from this video today. I thank you for taking the time to listen, and I'll be seeing you again very soon. Thank you.